Welcome to this video, creating a mobile app for your business. My name's David Head and I'm the consulting engineer for FileMaker in the Asia Pacific region. So what's this video about? Well, it's about creating a mobile app for your business, and we need to start at the start. So we need to ask, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the pain that you're trying to relieve? In other words, why are you doing this? Why do you want to create a mobile app? It's also important for us to consider what a successful app will look like and how it can potentially change our business for the better. Then we'll move on to the use case. We need to carefully define what we need the app to do and how it will be used. And this involves thinking about who will be the users, what devices they'll be using, where they'll be using them, and the data and reporting they need to do their job. And then we need to build it. We need to look at 3 steps to start building concepts, building the app itself, and then testing and deployment. And finally, we'll look at where you go next. I'll outline some of the resources available and where to go for further information. So let's start by describing the problem. To do this, we need to describe current systems or processes and think about any problems that result from their use. Where there is pain using these systems, we need to describe and quantify these pain points. We need to do this so that later we can assess how the app has improved our business. Now, overall, we need to be very clear about the changes that we can effect with a great solution in our business. So by understanding where we're at the moment, we can really understand where we need to go. Now, in this webinar, we're going to be using a fictitious building business run by Stephen James called ABC Construction. Stephen specialises in new homes and renovations, and he's always got several projects running at the same time with managers and contractors on site. One of the areas of improvement that Stephen's identified is the timesheets completed by contractors, and this is a smart thing to focus on one particular task that he can improve to start with. So currently the manager has a form, 1 per site per day, that's filled out by every contractor. Now, in a perfect world, these forms are dropped into the office at the end of each week so that pay calculations can be done. But, of course, it's not a perfect world. So when we have a look at the timesheets that are being used on site, this is what a standard timesheet looks like. And this is what it looks like when information is filled in. And we can identify the sorts of errors that are regularly made on these timesheets. For example, there is incomplete information like the site name or the contractor's names. A major problem is that people don't often correctly calculate their hours. So you can see that Johan started at 7 a.m. and worked until 5 p.m. with a total of an hour on breaks. But it seems he forgot to deduct his breaks and he's come up with 10 hours instead of 9. And Harry apparently started at 7 a.m. as well, and he left at 11:30, but he has actually added his break time to the time that he worked. And it seems that Matt J forgot to sign off altogether, so we don't actually know how many hours he worked. So at the end of the day, Bob has to redo all of the hourly calculations himself just to check them and then add them all up before submitting the form. And then when the form gets into the office staff don't actually trust any of those calculations, so they redo all the calculations again before manually entering all of that data into their accounting and timekeeping system so that they can do their job as the next step. So there's obviously a lot of problem there with getting the data entered and getting the data correct. Now, in an effort to improve these time calculations, Steve produced a time calculator where workers could match up their start time with their end time, and that would show them the total hours that they had worked. But this proved to be something else that the workers needed to be taught to use, and it was something else that needed to be carried around with the timesheet, and overall it just didn't improve the situation much at all. So we're still back in the same position of manually calculating all of the times that people are working. So clearly there is lots of pain in a relatively simple process of getting people to clock in, clock out and record their breaks. We have incomplete or unreadable data, incorrect calculations, a lot of people calculating and recalculating totals. The paper forms may be submitted on time or not, or sometimes get lost altogether, and Stephen suspects that some of the start and end times are somewhat creative. It's clearly obvious why Stephen wants to start this project. It'll certainly make the sign in and out process a lot quicker and easier to use, and also result in more accurate data and complete data being collected and calculated. So it's a great project for him to start to see some advantages. With any project, we need to know what success would look like. We need to have a vision of a better way of working, and this can include outcomes that may have been previously impossible to achieve. When the project is finished, it would be great to know what the real effects of the solution are. To be able to measure success, we need to quantify the current situation and then compare that with the new. And this will enable us to measure savings in time, money, efforts, and also in the flow-on effects of simply getting things right. So in Stephen's case, success would look like this. Contractors would easily clock in and clock out. Timesheets would probably be submitted every day rather than every week, and the accuracy of data could be assured because the system would timestamp start and end times, and totals would be automatically calculated. The system would also prevent something that we might call creative time entry by workers. The times starting and finishing would be much more accurate. Ideally, the system would allow managers to upload data from home rather than having to come into the office to drop in the forms. And once the data hits the office, the process to move it into the accounting or timekeeping system could be also automated. So ultimately, Stephen would have happy people all the way through the business, from contractors to managers to the office staff. So when you have worked out what you need and why, it's time to consider how it's going to be built. And there are lots of options for creating mobile solutions, from programming in custom native app development through to buying existing off-the-shelf apps. And when considering your solution, always start with the problem rather than with a platform or a product. If you know what you need, it will be easier to analyze your choices. Now, the FileMaker platform has many strengths. Solutions can be developed rapidly with prototypes used to test use cases. The breadth of clients for deployment is quite unique to FileMaker. A single solution can potentially be deployed to desktop machines, both Windows and Mac, and also to iPad and iPhone devices, and even to web browsers on desktop and mobile machines. FileMaker solutions can connect in a number of ways with external systems such as accounting, project management, and SQL data stores. And the FileMaker platform operates at a great range of levels and developer experience, from those just getting started through to experienced professional developers. So in this vein, what is it that Stephen needs? Well, data capture has to be mobile and offline. There's no guarantee of network access at these building sites, and it needs to be able to connect at some stage with an office-based system, and that office-based system needs to connect to their Xero accounting solution. As far as look and feel goes, of course, it has to be modern and easy to use. It needs to look simple as well as being simple. So not dumbed down and unfunctional, just simple to use. The mobile solution should auto-enter the time and date where needed, and also do any of the complex time calculations required. Mobile devices have the ability to take photos, sign on glass, and geolocate themselves, and all that may be useful at some point for this project and for other projects that Stephen's got in mind. And finally, he doesn't want to wait. Stephen's got this time frame of yesterday for deployment for this particular solution, so he's pretty enthusiastic about getting started. And the FileMaker platform certainly seems like a great fit for Stephen for this particular project. So what else do we need to consider here? Well, we can bring all of this together in a series of well-defined use cases. Answering the standard what, when, where, how, and who questions is all part of this. And you can see some examples of sort of questions that you might ask, but it's not an exhaustive list. Your project will have some unique considerations. And don't forget to dream. If you're going to build this solution, think outside the box to see how a mobile app could really transform your business processes. So let's have a look at 3 steps in the development of a solution. The first one is simply to get started. To do this, you might need to learn a little about FileMaker development, how it works and how to build solutions, and what tools are available. And we have lots of learning resources to help you get started. I'll cover some of those resources at the end of the video. You can get going your own with a do-it-yourself project and see what's possible. Remember that this may never see the light of day, but it's really useful to get your hands dirty with a bit of development, and it will help you to better understand the requirements of the solution. You may be able to get to the stage of presenting a basic proof of concept to other stakeholders and get their buy-in and enthusiasm for getting this project off the ground. Now the second step is to look at building the actual solution. If you're going to be doing this, then you need a lot more training and skills development. It's an investment of your time to get familiar with the FileMaker platform and the tools. You'll have lots of questions and you'll run into lots of problems that you need to solve. At this stage, you may decide it may be quicker to get a professional developer in to have a look at this project. And that process will be much easier now that you've got a very clear idea of what you want. And the third step is to test the solution and then get it out there in the field. Testing is vital in this process. You can't afford for this solution to be released to the users and fail. There are lots of deployment issues to consider before you go live. And again, this is where a professional developer could help out a lot. So Stephen's decided to go ahead and have a go at developing something in FileMaker Pro. Remember that this was his paper form, and he identifies areas here for the construction site itself, the site, the supervisor, the date, and also data for each worker logging their times, their name, their start, their end times, and their breaks. So he could start with something like this. He could start with something where you can enter the site address, the date, and the manager, and then details for each of the workers in a structure called a portal. So he's made some progress with his time calculations, asking some questions and getting help on the FileMaker community, and you can see that the calculations are working, taking into account the total time from their start time and their end time and their breaks. And then this is broken up into normal time, which is up to 8 hours, and overtime, any time over 8 hours. And finally, Stephen has set up the time totals for all workers for the site for the day. So once the data structure was working, he had a bit of a go at tidying things up on a layout designed for an iPad device. And you can see that the layout theme here used is touch friendly with much bigger fields, and the fields are being designed or laid out in a much clearer way. And with a few more late night efforts and a few more questions on the FileMaker community, Stephen has enabled some other changes as well. You can see that the date is formatted to show the day of the week and the month of the year. Time totals are hours and minutes only with no seconds there. And there's conditional formatting to show who's clocked out, they're the people in red, and who's clocked in, and those are the people in green. The placeholder text on each of the fields shows what data is expected, like the contractor name, the breaks, etc. So Stephen's certainly got a long way here to develop a solution and start really thinking about what he wants in the solution and how it's going to be built and the sort of structure that's needed. And you can see here that FileMaker is a fairly easy solution for him to get started and start building something. So let's step back and have a look at a demonstration of how this solution might get built in FileMaker. Before building the file, Stephen's mapped out a plan of what he thinks he might need in terms of tables, fields and relationships. The file is going to be called sitelog, and there will be two tables and a relationship between them. So the first table is the sitelog table, and it represents one record per site per day. There's going to be a field in there called ID, which will be an auto-entered serial number giving each record a unique number. Then there will be data fields for the site, the address, the date and the site manager's name. And then there will be three calculation fields which will be the total of all the hours worked at the site. The second table is the worker log and represents one record per worker per site log. Once again, there will be an ID field for a unique serial number for every record, and there'll also be a field for the ID of the site that this record relates to. And then information about each of the workers, so their name, their start time, their end time, and up to 3 breaks recorded as number of minutes. Then there'll be calculation fields, the total time worked, then the normal time up to 8 hours total time, and the overtime, which is any hours over 8 hours normal. Then there will be a relationship between these tables. This will be one-to-many, where one site log record has potentially many related worker log records, and looking the other way, each worker log record relates to one and only one site log record. So let's hop into FileMaker Pro and build this file. So from the Launch Center we choose a new solution, name it as we wanted to sitelog, and for the moment save it on the desktop. So FileMaker has set up a new file for us with one table being sitelog, and we need to set up another table called workerlog. So that's very easy and quick to create. So now on to create fields in the tables, and this is super easy when we've got a plan. So here's the ID field, which is a number field in the sitelog table, and we go into options and set it up as an auto-entered serial number. Then we have the address field, which was the address of the site, which is a text. Create that. And then the date log, which is the date that the log is created. We create that as a date field, and then the site manager's name, which again is a text field. Create that. Okay, let's leave the calculation fields in the site log for the moment and move on to the worker log table. So again we have an ID field, which is a unique serial number in that field for each record created. And then we're going to create an ID for the site log, and this is the field that will link the worker log record to a specific site log. Then we have the name of the worker, which is a text field. The start time, which will be a time field, recording a time in hours and minutes. The end time, also a time field. And then we have 3 break fields, which are going to be number fields. So we will record their breaks in numbers of minutes. So here's the first of the calculation fields, which will be the total time worked. So we set this up as a calculation field. We don't have time to go into all the details of calculation fields here, but the logic of this calculation is that if there is an end time entered, then we're going to work out how many hours they've worked. So we take the start time and the breaks away from the end time. If there is no end time entered, then we're going to simply return 0, meaning that they haven't finished yet, so we won't work out how many hours they've worked. So the calculation result is going to be a time result in hours and minutes worked. So okay to that, that's our calculation. The second calculation then is the normal time calculation. And the logic of this is that normal time is any time up to 8 hours. So we return 8 hours for normal time if they've worked more than that. Otherwise we return whatever they've worked in normal time. And once again, the calculation result is going to be a time result. So okay, and then the third calculation then is overtime. And the simple logic here is that any time that they have worked more than 8 hours total is overtime. Otherwise we return 0 for overtime. So again, fairly simple logic here in a calculation, but it's conditional on what's been entered or calculated in other fields. Let's look at relationships then. We know there's a relationship between these two tables, so we can simply drag and drop the ID from the site log table to the ID site of the worker log table. So drag and drop across here, and we simply create a relationship. So double click this box to open up the relationship, and we can see the match fields that we've set. We'll turn on this option to allow creation of related records in the worker log table via the relationship, and you'll see what that does later, and also the option to delete related records in the worker log table whenever we delete a record in the site log table. So with that, let's go back to the site log fields and add a few more calculations. These are totals for the related worker log records. So total hours will simply be the sum of all the related worker log total hours and returning a time result. Total normal time for the site is the total of all the normal hour calculations for each of the workers, and total overtime hours is the sum of all of the overtime calculations for each of the related worker records. So exiting that, and in browse mode here we can set up some data for a site log, and here is the address, the date of that log, and the name of the site manager. Now, to add related worker log records to this view, we need to enter layout mode and add an object called a portal. So just think of this as a list of related worker records. So these are worker log records, and OK. And the fields that we need to know about each worker log record: the name of the worker, the start time, the end time, each of their break times, and the calculations that we set up: total time, normal time, and overtime. Okay, so FileMaker set up the portal for us with all of the fields that we need to know about each of the worker log records. So we exit layout and get back into browse mode, and then we can test this out. So here is a record for George. He started work at 7 AM and he finished at 5 PM. Okay, so he had his first break was 15 minutes, his second break was 60 minutes, and his third break was 30 minutes. So that gives him a total of 8 hours and 15 minutes, and that's been broken up into 8 hours normal time and 15 minutes overtime. So the second worker is Fred. He also started at 7 in the morning and finished at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but he only had a single 20-minute break, so that gives him 9 hours 40 total time, broken up into 8 hours normal time and 1 hour 40 overtime. Pretty cool. Last time, here is Harry. Again, started at 7 o'clock with the rest of them, but he went home early at 12 o'clock, which gives him 5 hours work, but he did have a 45-minute break. So when we add that in, it takes his total time down to 4 hours and 15 minutes, and that's 4 hours 15 over normal time and no overtime. So let's move on to look at how easy it is to build a layout for the iPad. We will need to do this in layout mode. So we edit the layout. And once we get into layout mode, we click the new layout button in the status area, and we're going to create a layout based on site log records and give it a unique name and descriptive. So this is the iPad site log layout, and select iPad. It's going to be a form displaying one record at a time in portrait mode, and we finish. So simple, there's the blank layout ready to go in FileMaker. So we need to place objects on the layout, and we'll start with a little bit of text in the top navigation area, and we'll just put in there site log so that people know what they're looking at. And then we'll use the field picker to select fields that we want to drag and drop onto the layout. So here are the basic fields about the site, so the address, the date, and the manager name. Drag and drop those onto the layout and line them up where we want them. So just drag across a little bit here. And then we'll set up the portal in the same way as we did before. So here's the portal, just drag out a portal, and we will select worker log records to display. In this case, we'll make it a scrolling portal just in case there are a lot of records to enter. And the fields that we're going to show once again are the name, the start time. This time we'll just show the breaks and the end time. We won't bother showing the calculations at the moment, we know those work. Click OK. Now these break fields don't need to be that big, so we will select those and make them a bit smaller. They only need to have a number in them, so we'll move those across a bit, and we can move the start time field over, and that allows us to make the name fields a little bit longer for the longer names that are going to be entered in there. Now the three site log calculation fields can go in the top right of the layout, so we'll drag them out here and line them up. You can see the dynamic guides helping me to line them up with the edge of the portal, so that's really nice. And let's just label the portal, so we'll get a text tool and click in here and type workers, just so that people know what they're looking at a list of here. And just close the field picker for the moment and exit layout, and we can see what we've set up, and you can see all of the data that we played with earlier, the names, the start and the end times and the breaks. And there's functionality to add another worker record right below here, so we can put in name and start time and everything as we can before. So we'd like to adjust this date format from just a standard date, and the times we knock off we don't need seconds in there. So we get into layout mode, we'll make this date field a little bit longer to accommodate a longer date format. And in our inspector, we'll hop into the data tab and look at data formatting for this field, and we'll choose a date format that has the long day of the week and the long month of the year displayed. So for the hour fields here, we can also do the same sort of thing, selecting these 3 fields and changing the time format to show just the hours and minutes rather than the hours, minutes and seconds. And the appearance of this, we'll hop into this area and change the alignment of the field, so all the hours on the right hand side. And while we're here, we'll select the break fields and make them all centered. To help out with data entry for these fields in the portal, the worker's name field will put in some placeholder text. So we'll put in text contracted name, and this will display when the field is empty. And we'll do the same thing with all the other fields in the portal, so the start time and each of the breaks and the end time. So what this will mean is that text will display in the field when the field is empty and indicate what data needs to go into that field. So setting up end time here, and then getting out of browse and back into browse mode, you can see here the break time, and when I type in some text, the placeholder text disappears. After working on the solution himself, Stephen's recognised his limits in knowledge and skills for building the ultimate tool that he wants to provide to his workers. So while he's interested in continuing to improve his FileMaker skills, he knows it'll take him longer than he's prepared to wait for this particular solution. And of course he has a business to run. So his next step is to contact a professional developer and brief her on his requirements. From that meeting, the developer may start on a prototype and provide a proposal for development and a time frame for delivery. So here are some notes from the meeting that Stephen and the developer had to thrash out the required screens and functionality. Along the way, they made a lot of decisions in terms of what needed to be on the screen at what time and what functionality was needed there. And there were a number of questions raised, some of which could be answered immediately and others that needed to be worked through. But you can see things starting to come together in terms of how the iPad solution might look and what sort of buttons might be on screen at various times when the user is using the solution. And it's certainly been very useful for Stephen to have a go at doing this himself and get a better understanding of what sort of structure he needs, but the developer is obviously very easily able to help out in what it's going to look like. And in short order, she comes back with a proof of concept on an iPad to demonstrate some of the concepts she was mentioning in the meeting. And this gives Stephen a great idea of what's possible in a FileMaker solution running on an iPad. And it also makes sure that he and the developer are on the same page. So Stephen starts to see how great the app can look on an iPad, and he's amazed that the developer has only taken somewhere in the region of 8 to 10 hours to get this far. But of course it's not complete yet. There's still a lot to do. But this certainly starts the discussion of what Stephen likes, what he doesn't, and what features he sees as important and how he might like things to work differently. It also gives him ideas for other things that he could build FileMaker apps for in his business. So it's certainly really useful to get a professional developer in here and have a look at this. So let's have a look at a demo of the prototype and see how it works on an iPad. So here is the iPad. We have FileMaker Go loaded onto here. FileMaker Go 14 is the icon in the top left-hand corner, the latest version of FileMaker Go. And when we tap that, it opens up into the Launch Center, and you can see recent files being used on the iPad. The Site Manager file is in the top middle, so we simply tap on that to launch into the Site Manager solution. And you can see here that it's already set up the site manager name, the workday and the site, but the site manager may be working on a different site. It may be a different site manager using the iPad. So we can hop into an area, the tasks, here's a popover, and we can set up here the manager information, the contractors and the sites. So this is set up for the day. So when we tap on the manager icon here, the solution is going to give us a warning that we haven't set up our PIN code yet. And this is a code that's used to lock certain areas of the solution so that people apart from the manager can't get into those areas. Okay, so Bob will go in here and check his information like his name, email address and phone number, and he can obviously set a lock code at this point. So this lock code will be used to lock up certain areas that are for the manager only in the solution. So just to test that out, let's go back into the tasks area here and try to get back into the manager area. And this time when we do, it prompts us for a lock code. So obviously if we know what that is, it will let us in there, but if we are just guessing, and we guess, say, this might be his lock code, and tap OK, it comes back with an error and says that an incorrect lock code's been entered, so you can't get into that area. So let's move on to looking at people clocking on for the day. The manager is able to go into tasks and set up the contractor records. These are people who might be working on any particular day on any site. And we have the ability here to go into any particular worker record and edit the data, their name and their phone number. So let's say, for example, here that Harry's phone number has been incorrectly entered. We can very easily edit that, and of course we can add new workers here as well. So they would be listed as someone who could work during the day. Also in the tasks area, we have the ability to manage the sites where we work as a manager. Again, this is an area that's locked up now with manager access. But when we get into here, you can see all the different sites that this particular manager might be working on. We can edit the data about those sites, and we can select one of those sites as being the current site for the day. So in this case, Bob is working at King Street, so he sets that as his current site. And very easy to use, very intuitive sort of interface that the developer has set up here in a prototype. So this is going well. Now for the day view then, this is where workers come in and select their name. In this case, Brian has tapped on his name and he's got a warning that he hasn't set a lock code at the moment. And he can very easily go in here and set a lock code. And what this will do for Brian is make sure that he's the only person who can go in to his area and clock him in and clock him off, and also add breaks. So it's a security decision that's been made by the developer to make sure that no people have accurate data being entered for their own records. So you can see here that Brian has clocked on at 6:43, so a very accurate clock in time set by the iPad in the solution. So we go back out of there and someone else can come along and select their name. So Harry comes in here and he enters his lock code, which is already in the system, and he can get in there and clock on and start work for the day. So once again, very accurately entering when he actually arrived at work and clocked on for the day. So this is a very useful demonstration for Stephen of what's possible in a fully enabled iPad solution. Certainly very impressive that the developer has been able to understand his business and come back and set things up for him and show him what's possible. So here's lunchtime simulation. People are coming through here and adding their breaks. So Brian is going to log in with his PIN code. And you can see that he's already clocked out at 12:07, but he remembered that he had another break he hasn't logged, so he's going to go in here as a good worker and try and log that. But he's being told here that he's already clocked out for the day, so he can't add any more breaks. So this is a point of discussion with the developer as to business process, as to whether that's a reasonable thing to do or whether we should let Brian add in another break when he's already clocked off for the day. So, no, point of discussion here. So here's someone else coming in at lunchtime and going to log a break for themselves. You can see that Harry clocked on at 6:44. He had a 15-minute break, and there we go. Very simply, he's added another 45-minute break for himself for lunch. So, and this is as easy as it should be for all of the workers just to come in and log their breaks. One of the things we're not doing here necessarily is we're logging the time of their break. We're just saying how many minutes they had for a break during the day. And here's Johan. Johan is going to log a 60-minute break for lunch, and he can simply tap and log out again. So very easy to do all of that stuff. During the day, Bob, as the site manager, is able to go into the site view and have an overview of what's happening on the site during the day, and he can see all the people that are working there during the day today and all of the hours that they've accrued up to this point in time. He can also swipe across and see a breakdown of normal time to overtime, and you can see here that at this point of time, lunchtime during the day, no one's obviously clocked up any overtime. But this is a great way for him to keep an eye on how many hours all of the workers are accruing during the day for the site. So very good management here, and we move on to the end of the day when people are going to be coming through and clocking off. Again, the iPad is going to do this very accurately for them in terms of when they clock off at the end of the day and add up the hours that they've accrued for the day, including all of their breaks. So here's Harry, and he's had a couple of breaks during the day. He's going to simply clock off here now for the day and finish his day's work. And the iPad knows what time it is, so when he clocks off, it very accurately puts in 16:42 as his finish time. So he's done 9 hours work during the day, so that obviously in the background is calculating out as some normal time and overtime. He's just remembered that he actually did have another break, but the system is preventing him from putting that in here because he's already clocked off. So at the end of the day, Bob's going to go through and have a look at the site view again, and he can see how many hours each person accrued through the day, and obviously some people went home early and some people worked a full day and even more. So swiping across here, he can see now there's a breakdown of normal time, and there has been a little bit of overtime accrued on the site during the day. So that's very useful. It's something that Bob was certainly not able to do easily with the paper form previously. This is the sort of level of additional information that can be provided by an app on the iPad. Now, Bob also has the ability to go in there and sync with the Office. So when he's back online, maybe when he's at home, he can sync with the Office, and this would have a process in there to make sure that, for example, everyone had clocked off at the end of the day, and then it's going to send all the information back to the Office database and process those through for those people's timesheets. And when he's finished all of that, he can exit the site manager, he's back into his iPad, and he can clock off himself for the day. So that's a great demonstration of what he can do, what we can do in this iPad solution. So remember, that's just a prototype. It's something that the developer has developed in 8 to 10 hours, but certainly very impressive in terms of what can be done in that small amount of time. So certainly more discussions can happen from that about what needs to be done, and the full development can happen with both the iPad solution and also the desktop solution that's going to be back in the office. So when all of that's been developed, some of the most important steps happen, and first of these is user testing. So it's incredibly important to get users involved in this as early as possible. You need them to support this project and be keen to start using it. And other stakeholders such as business managers and those who will benefit indirectly should also be involved in this. Now, when a user is asked to test the app, then what you need to do is provide tasks for them to do, such as log in and clock on at your start time at 7 a.m. rather than tap this button and then scroll down and then do this. People can generally follow those instructions, but we're after an idea of how intuitive the solution is. So gather people's thoughts about how easy and intuitive that might be to use and how much more efficient the whole process will be. Also be on the lookout for new feature suggestions and suggested updates as to how people would think that the solution might be able to be used. There are a lot of things to consider for deployment. So there will probably be a FileMaker server hosting a FileMaker solution in the office, and that'll provide security and backup of files, but we also need to think about user security, their account names and passwords to log in. And we also need to think about how the FileMaker app is going to be deployed to mobile devices and how we get those to the managers. The synchronization of data between the Office and the iPad devices obviously needs to be set up and tested, and there is work to connect the Office solution to the Xero accounting system. So certainly Stephen was very wise to talk to a professional developer for all this assistance, and that's going to be more than worth it in the long run to get a great solution actually working for him. So he's well on the way to getting all of this sort of stuff done. Where does that leave us from the point of view of development then? Well, hopefully you've got a great idea of the process that's required to build a custom mobile app and where you can start learning and building this yourself. You should also have a great impression of just what's possible when developing with the FileMaker platform. Gorgeous modern apps running on your iPad and iPhone, as well as solutions running on desktop, Windows and Mac computers. And you can even push this out to web browsers. So the FileMaker platform is truly flexible and powerful. So to start or continue your FileMaker journey, there are some resources that you might find useful. And the first of these is the FileMaker Community, where Stephen got some answers on the FileMaker forum. There are also a lot of PDF resources for your reading, so it's your go-to place for everything FileMaker. It's open to browse and free to join, so certainly take a journey to community.filemaker.com and start browsing around, have a look at what's there, what sort of resources you can get access to, and the sort of help that you can get on the various forums. If you don't already have FileMaker licenses, then you can download a free, fully functional 30-day trial of FileMaker Pro 14, and that will give you plenty of time to get to know FileMaker Pro before you purchase a license. The mobile app FileMaker Go 14 that you saw running on the iPad is free for download from the App Store for iPad and iPhone, and that can be used to run any FileMaker solution that you've built with FileMaker Pro. And there are many more webinars that have been recorded and that are available online for your learning. And there's a link to training resources as well. So one of those training resources is the FileMaker training series. And there are two massive volumes here. The first is the basics for beginners and the advanced volume for intermediate and advanced developers. The basics is free, and the advanced is a paid download. So both are available as either PDF or iBooks from the iBook store. So the easiest way to get the iBook is to go to the iBook store and search for FileMaker, and the FileMaker training series will come straight up and you can download that. If you like Stephen and you're looking for a FileMaker developer, then we have you covered there as well. Go to developer.filemaker.com/search to find a developer in your area. We list a lot of FileMaker certified developers, experts in developing mobile solutions, web development experts, and also those who can host your FileMaker solution. So there's a lot of people out there who are doing this professionally and can give you some advice. So certainly there are probably some questions that this raises for you. I'm happy to answer those questions for you. If you want to email me directly on my email address, then that is david_head@filemaker.com. But I hope that this video has been useful for you and that you've got a lot out of it and you can start your journey with FileMaker development. So good luck and have a nice rest of the day.